Thank you very much. Good afternoon to you all. Let me start by welcoming the Security Pact signed with Ukraine, including also a number of bilateral ones in the presence of President Zelensky, together with the agreement on the aid coming from proceeds from frozen Russian assets, the 14th package of sanctions and the start of accession negotiations with Ukraine and Moldova. We are sending the clearest of messages of our unwavering support for Ukraine, our common security, and the geopolitical importance of enlargement. It has been 2.5 weeks since the European elections, and we have today a better view of what people expect us to deliver on over the next 5 years. The challenge is now how to turn these electoral messages into a political programme for the European Parliament, for a programme that is serious, that is deliverable and that is implementable. This was the core of the discussion that I just had with the leaders. People have called for the defence of our values and for security to remain our top priority, meaning that our support for Ukraine must continue. It means doing more to increase Europe's ability to respond to any type of crisis, and it means real strategic autonomy. It also means the need to ramp up our capabilities, decrease duplications and reduce the fragmentation of our defence industries. Now, this of course ties with the discussion on Europe's competitiveness, both from an economic and a political perspective. The message we heard in these elections was one of people being worried about whether they can pay their bills, whether they can keep their job, or whether they will ever be able to afford to buy their own house. And these messages should serve, first of all, as food for thought when we discuss fair and rules-based trade, deepening of the single market, the need for both private and public funding, and the need to cut red tape and to simplify procedures. There's one message that we can take from this, is that the responsibility now lies with us in order to have the answers to those challenges with both ambition and understanding, especially when it comes to making progress on the green and digital transitions. No one should be left behind. Implementation here is going to be key, and that must be our focus now. That is how we can bring Europe a little bit closer to how our people want it to be, and how we will deliver on a stronger, fairer and better Europe for all Europeans. I ended my first comments by saying that a strong programme also needs a strong team to take us forward. We cannot have one without the other. So I recalled that the European Parliament remains firmly behind the lead candidate process, but of course we will respect due process. So the next step is for leaders to agree on the nomination of the President of the European Commission, hopefully already tonight. We will then invite the nominee to meet with group leaders already on Tuesday next week to discuss a political programme that is first of all able to catch the electoral messages that I've outlined, and that also can find the necessary qualified majority in Parliament. So Parliament stands ready to move the smooth process forward for electing the Commission President without delay. That was my conclusion, so I'll stop here and I would be very happy to take your questions.
Thank you. There will be time for a couple of questions, and maybe starting by you, Marilu, please, right?
Presidente Metsola, lei pensa, ha detto che bisogna trovare un accordo a questo vertice sui cosiddetti top jobs. Pensa che si possa arrivare davvero ad un accordo, dato che c'è un accordo preliminare senza i conservatori? Grazie.
Lo spero, lo aspettiamo. Un accordo oggi ci darà la possibilità di votare a luglio a Strasburgo. Devo ricordare che oggi, con differenza da altri anni, abbiamo solamente una sessione a luglio a Strasburgo, e allora avremo la possibilità di fare il voto, se troviamo un accordo oggi, il 18 luglio. E allora speriamo.
Next question, Eddie, please.
Thank you. Eddie Wax from Politico. Two short questions. The Council has complained to the Parliament that your planned changes to the rules of procedure disrupt the institutional balance in terms of you asking them to present the structure of the Commission before the Commission is voted on, and on this new way of doing scrutiny hearings. What's your reply been to Council? And I spoke to Mateusz Morawiecki from the Polish Law and Justice Party, who said that you would be a great fit as Commission President. What do you think about the endorsement of someone senior in the ECR? Thanks.
I'll start with the second question. The ECR is not yet composed, and therefore we will need to see the groups as they slowly start to be put together. And I say this because we still have time. The groups have given more or less each other until the 4th of July for this to be able to be set, after which those groups will start to negotiate on positions or not. So that's the next steps that will need to be taken with all the rules that accompany those building of the groups. On the reform, so this was something that had been long overdue, and I'm particularly proud of the fact that we led on a reform that I was wondering whether we would manage to find the right majorities. We set up first of all, an administrative task force led by the Secretary General, and also a political task force which had a representative or two from each political group, leading to proposed amendments to the rules of procedure that were voted on in April. Now, my answer, as I've already given it orally, but I will follow up in writing, is that first of all, the Parliament is certainly able and independent enough to reform itself. Secondly, the aim precisely of this reform is rather than increase the imbalance, but rather correct the imbalance that there currently is between the co-legislators. And this is also taking into account the ongoing process that has already been starting of the renegotiation of the framework agreement between the Parliament and the Commission, also long overdue, in order to allow for the Parliament, and this got huge majority across the European Parliament, to conduct the right that every Parliament has of scrutiny. And that means that there will be a very effective commissioner hearing process where commissioners who are coming to the European Parliament, as they are designated by the Commission President designate and their governments, will commit to working with the legislature. We have had very good experiences in the past, but we've had less good experiences in the past. And this reform is aimed at streamlining and smoothening the process rather than depending on the individual.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Tomasz Foti from the Hungarian Press. I'm here. Can you confirm that the Hungarian Prime Minister is not going to Strasbourg in July to present the government's program?
So the Hungarian and the agenda of the July session will be set on the 11th of July. Why 11th of July? Because we need to wait to see what happens today. So if this were a normal election year, we would have two Strasbourg sessions, one where there would be the election of the Parliament President, election of Vice Presidents and Quaestors, and presentation of political priorities of the incoming or actual presidency, and then another Strasbourg session a couple of weeks later, where the election of the President of the European Commission would be done. We are now not in that situation, so we are in a situation where, because the election was in June, we only have one Strasbourg session, so we are looking at a session that is solely committed, if a decision is taken today, to having the constitutive decisions, in other words, the election. So I cannot confirm yet. The agenda will be set on the 11th of July, but that's how it's looking until today.
Next question, Andy Barnes. Yes, please.
Hi, Andy Bounds, Financial Times. You said the message of the elections was, people wanted a stronger, better Europe. Isn't people voting for the right and the extreme right saying they want less Europe? And if you don't deliver the things you mentioned in the next 5 years, more jobs, better economy, better housing for people, what's going to happen in the next elections? Do you see anything in the strategic agenda which is going to fundamentally change things in Europe?
Well, I mentioned in my earlier comments that we need to focus also on implementation. And I said this because if there's one thing that resonated across each member state, and as candidates come back elected, or even prime ministers and heads of state are saying today, is that the European Union needs to deliver either on the legislative decisions that it takes by implementing them, needs to look at the impact of decisions that are taken, needs to look at the financial costs, and needs to look at the societal and economic costs. And I say this because this campaign also showed, in spite of the fact that the turnout increased slightly over the last 5 years, but that the message of use your vote resonated. Now the responsibility is on us. And if we don't deliver, then those who would like to destroy Europe will only grow. And I don't think we can afford to find ourselves here in 2029 running for an election, and this is something we learned this time in the campaign that we ran, but also in the way the discussion evolved in different member states, is that the same game or the status quo can be. So I think that is a message that I take myself. I was a candidate in this election, and it is one where there is, in all the groups, and I'm currently conducting talks with members from across the political spectrum, is one that resonates from left to right.
Here in the second round, please. Yes, you.
Thank you so much. Dmytro Shkurko, National News Agency of Ukraine. So far, we've seen that the right parties increase its position in the new parliament. Do you expect that the European Parliament will preserve the level of support to Ukraine and to its fight against Russian aggression? This is the first question. And the second issue, in the old parliament, it was an important issue of preparation for enlargement and including reforming EU legislation. Do you expect that the new parliament will go on with that work? Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm very optimistic, so my answer to both questions is yes. If we see that the results have returned a picture that shows that the pro-European centre has held, that will be tested in the next few weeks, so to be clear. However, I do not fear any backsliding on the commitments made by the 9th European Parliament legislature in the 10th.
Next question. Yes, please. Here.
Bonjour, Emmanuel Beretta. Le Point. Je peux poser ma question en français?
Oui.
Si vous aviez dû mener ce processus de sélection des candidats, est-ce que vous auriez associé Mme Meloni au pool des 6 négociateurs, ne serait-ce que pour assurer à Mme von der Leyen une majorité plus large au Parlement européen? Est-ce que ce n'était pas une chose à faire?
Les discussions, elles ne sont pas finies, elles n'ont pas fini, et je pense que tous les pays ils seront associés pendant ce jour. Pour moi, la chose qui est importante est que d'assurer la plus grande majorité possible, parce que ça va aider les majorités d'être construites dans le Parlement européen. On doit attendre, mais la chose que c'est pour moi important est de n'exclure pas aucun pays.
And maybe one last question. Christian, au fond de la salle.
Oui, bonjour, Christian Spielmann. Vous avez parlé des forces qui veulent détruire l'Europe. Elles sont aux portes du pouvoir en France. Est-ce que vous avez peur que si le Rassemblement national devient majoritaire et forme un gouvernement, l'Europe va collapser parce que la France sera incapable d'agir et de respecter et de faire mettre en œuvre toutes les législations auxquelles ils sont opposés? Et donc c'est finalement la fin de l'Europe.
Je pense sur les adjectifs que je peux utiliser, mais on doit attendre les résultats, les 2 tours. Je peux dire que tous les collègues dans le Parlement européen qui sont candidats ou pas, ils travaillent pour leur objectif, pour leur pays. Et alors on doit voir. On doit voir c'est ce qui se passera avec la décision que le peuple français va prendre, premièrement, ce dimanche et après 2 semaines. On va voir et on va répondre à cette question dans le sommet qui vient.